Thanks for staying with us at STL Live. My guest is Judge Erin Burlison, and we're talking about suggestions to help children through divorce situations. And we were talking in our last segment about you as a judge in the family court. You have hundreds of cases every single year of contested divorces, right. And almost every single one of them has children somewhere in the middle of that.
Most of them.
Mm-hmm. So what are some tips from your really unique vantage point that you can share with parents who are going through this, how to protect their children from the impact of divorce, which is a horrible thing to begin with?
Well, I think one of the main ones is to not speak negatively about your spouse to the children or in front of the children. And that seems like an obvious tip, but I really think that parents underestimate the impact that has on children. I mean, children tend to internalize the words that they hear their parents say, and they perceive it differently. I just this morning had a 10-year-old testify in front of me, and she talked about how she hated being in the middle. She hated hearing her parents speak negatively about one another. And I asked her how that made her feel, and she said, well, it made me feel sad and bad. And she expounded on that and said, it's because I know that if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have to talk at all. Mm. And so she internalizes it and thinks that she's the cause of it, because she actually said, I know if I wasn't in their lives, they wouldn't have to speak anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's really scary that a 10-year-old feels that way.
Can perceive that, right?
And I think that parents tend to think or underestimate that it goes a lot deeper for children, or it can.
Yeah, and it can probably just be little comments here and there about money or separation, having to drive a child to the other parent's house, things like that can be perceived very differently for a child.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that leads into another issue, which is putting the kids in the middle, talking about financial matters. You know, a lot of parents fight about finances, and the kids know a lot of those finances have to do with their activities, have to do with their education. Mm-hmm. And so when parents put the kids in the middle, they tend to feel it's their fault somehow. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to unfortunately tell a lot of litigants not to put the kids in the middle with respect to arguments or even putting documents in their book bag. You don't need to send your child support check through your child. You don't need to relay messages through your child. And just because parents are going through a divorce doesn't mean the children have to lose their identity as children. They shouldn't be tasked with the responsibilities of relaying adult matters.
Right. What about school situations? So, you know, at school we've got conferences and open houses and all those interactions, sporting events after school. What do you recommend parents do about those? Well,
the best thing, as long as the parents are able to, is to attend those together. And I don't mean jump in the car and go together physically, but if you can attend those functions as a unit, it lets the children know that even though their parents are separating, they'll still be there to support the children. They can still unite as parents and be there and support their children's education or activities or their interest. Mm-hmm. And that's really important for the kids, because those are the activities that are really important to them.
Yeah. So be a united front, as hard as it might be for those parents.
Right.
So what about new relationships, bringing a new partner into that home environment? How does that impact kids?
Well, it's inevitable that both parents will at some point in time probably have another significant other. My advice would be just wait a little bit, especially during the divorce process. I mean, kids are typically the last to know about the divorce, and so parents don't allow them maybe as much time as they need to adjust to it. I mean, most of the couples know the divorce is in the near future, or they've been thinking about it. The parents or the kids aren't privy to that. They're not in the relationship. So when they find out about the divorce, it's brand new. Mm-hmm. So I think parents sometimes tend to not give as much time to the children as they need.
So even if there is another person, wait perhaps a little bit longer than you might naturally to introduce the children.
Right. The kids just need to adjust to their new surroundings first. Now, if the parent needs that significant other to help them get through the divorce, that's fine. It's just when it comes to actually introducing them to the kids or bringing them to the children's activities, it can just take some time before that should happen.
Okay, and what about counseling? In your role, do you recommend that all children get counseling, or do you look for signs as a parent that your child needs it?
It's not a mandatory thing that I offer, but I do think that it's important. I suggest it a lot, especially in the contested cases. I mean, even if it's individual counseling, or if it's counseling with a child and one particular parent, or if it's co-parenting counseling. Just because the parents are divorcing doesn't mean they can't attend counseling together. And it actually is a great thing if the parents go to co-parenting counseling. And so I do typically, my contested cases, recommend counseling for parents and for the children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you ever have any follow-up with the families?
Well, unfortunately, because in St. Charles County, where I'm located, we have a one family, one court policy. Mm-hmm. So some families tend to be in court often. So I might do the original divorce, and then I might do the several modifications that come after that. So there are times where I see a child for 5 years in front of me.
Yeah, get to know them and they you.
Yeah.
Well. Right. Any other tips or advice?
Well, I could probably go on and on and on, but no, I just think that even though you're going through this divorce, if you can love your children more than you dislike your ex or your soon-to-be ex, then and focus as much as you can on the children and their emotions, then you can try and make the best of a pretty bad situation.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
If you or someone you know is going through a divorce, we hope you'll pass along and practice these tips that Judge Burlison recommended. There's more STL Live after this break. We'll be right back.